Good evening. I call to order the Woodland Park Planning Commission for Thursday, August 25th. Big roll call, please.
Chairman Hartsfield.
Here.
Commissioner Brown is absent. Commissioner Harvey.
Here.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Here.
Commissioner Larson.
Here.
Commissioner Nielsen.
Here.
Thank you. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item is approval of minutes for August 11th. Have the opportunity to review that. Any comments or corrections?
Move to approve. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good. Takes us to public hearings. So tonight we have SUB 2022-04, Pines at Tamarack preliminary plat extension. A request for a one-year extension of previously approved Pines at Tamarack preliminary plat for residential development on 20.61 acres. Lot 2, Block 1, Day Springs Christian Fellowship in the Pines at Tamarack. And we have Will with us to present online via Zoom.
Yeah, good evening. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen real quick. So someone could just give me confirmation once you guys can see it, and I'll go ahead and get started.
It's good. And so there you go, Dave. Thank you.
That looks good.
Got it. All right, perfect. Yeah, so as you mentioned, this is for the Pines at Tamarack preliminary plat extension. So the preliminary plat as well as a plan unit development or PUD were originally approved in July 18th of 2019 for this 20-acre parcel. So just for a little context, so this is the subject property. It's in the northwest portion of the city. And then, as you can see, this is the planned layout as defined by the preliminary plat. So just for a little context, as I mentioned, this was originally approved July 18th of 2019. From there, the preliminary plat as well as the PUD had a 2-year lifetime, basically. And then in 2021, in May of 2021, an extension was requested. The way the code reads for these PUDs, they could be extended by 2 years if they wanted, whereas a preliminary plat is more specifically called out in the code as a 1-year extension. So in May of 2021, the preliminary plat was extended for 1 year and the plan unit development was extended for 2. Meaning that the two kind of expiration dates on those two started diverging. So that's why this preliminary plat is before you today, is that it expired on that July 18th of this year. And so they'd be requesting an extension basically to realign that with that plan unit development that goes along with it. So the way these extensions work is that a request needs to be made before that expiration date, which the applicant did do. They applied for their extension on July 11th, and they had until July 18th, so they got it in before that date. Even though this meeting is after that date, it would still be considered valid for requesting of an extension. All right, so moving along. So this is just the picture of the zoning map for the city. So you can see under that where it says project site is the triangle shaped piece of property that is this one, zoned that PUD or planning development, with most of the neighboring being either suburban residential or also some form of plan unit development. That pretty much is it. Staff found that the application is still valid, and as this is associated with a still ongoing plan unit development, we found that the extension made sense. So staff is recommending approval of a 1-year extension of the Pines at Tamarack preliminary plat to expire on July 18th, 2023. And then I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Does the applicant give any reasoning for the status of the project?
Karen, do you know on that one?
I don't. I'm gonna assume it's kind of like a lot of these other things. It just is taking longer than people would like to just secure financing and be comfortable with what's required. And with any construction project right now, that's just incredibly challenging, given how the costs of just materials and labor go up like hourly. If anybody's giving you a quote for longer than 30 days, consider it a gift. So,
Well, thank you.
yeah.
Any more questions for staff at this point? Normally, we'd invite the applicant to come forward. Do we have anybody online, the applicant by chance? Well, then I guess we won't take comment from the applicant. It is a public hearing, so we will open it to anyone in the public who has any questions. There's no one in the audience attending tonight. Anyone online with their hands raised? No one has their hands up. Last chance for comments or questions from the public. Public hearing is now closed. So any discussion?
I just remind me again, those are all single family residences that are proposed for that preliminary plat. There are no duplexes or.
Correct. The approval was for 26 single family detached residencies.
Detached, okay. No.
Does this go to the city council for their action, or do we have the final action on this?
You have the final action for a preliminary plat. PUDs, I think, are what need to go to council for extension. So.
No further discussion. I think we could probably entertain a motion.
Move to approve the 1-year extension of the Pines at Tamarack preliminary plat to July 18th, 2023.
I'll second.
Very good. Take a vote, please.
Commissioner Harvey,
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy,
Yes.
Commissioner Larson,
Yes.
Commissioner Nielsen,
Yes.
and Chairman Hartsfield.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess that closes the public hearings for the evening. Do we have any reports?
Just wanted to remind everybody that we had quite the schedule change thanks to short-term rentals. So instead of having no meeting on September 8th, we do need to do a work session with regard to that ordinance. I hope to get that packet out to you very early next week, so you have ample time to review a revised ordinance based on that. The work session we had jointly with City Council the other week. And in my email, I noted, that there is interest in moving this along as expediently as possible. So basically, I need to notice a public hearing on this before you have had, or send the notice to the newspaper before you guys have actually had your work session on that item. So if for some reason you're needing another work session and there is a public hearing that has been noticed,
You'll cancel it.
we can just reschedule it, or we'll just reschedule it. But I'm doing my best to meet schedules and desires.
So if we do a work session and come to some agreement on a draft ordinance, it would then go to the city council on what do you, gosh, I guess that would be the 15th.
22nd.
Oh, the 22nd, it would, no, that's our meeting.
Yeah,
Oh, so we would hear it on the 22nd.
yep.
And then it would go to them on the
First reading, October, whatever the
6th.
6th.
Okay.
Would there be revisions from the public hearing? And where would those take place? And we would decide on those.
Depending upon the nature of what's being revised, sometimes I've seen blessing of the ordinance to include this change, this change, this change. So city council then gets
So we could
the
say
revised ordinance.
we accept the ordinance with these revisions, or we need to see these revisions and then,
Yeah, but the next situation would basically continue the hearing to your next regular meeting and hopefully resolve whatever else.
and then there'll be a public hearing on the ordinance with the city council.
Yes,
There'd be a first reading and then.
And they have the option to revise it as well.
they do. And this is where we're going to get into legal land that I am very rusty on in terms of how much city council can potentially adjust what you send them before it needs to come back to you all.
They'll change the whole thing if they want to, unfortunately.
Would that be a Nina question? Would she be able to?
No, they can do that. There's, unless.
I don't know that they want to,
choose
but-
To kick it back to us, but they could change it. I mean, they did
Make
that with the sign
recommendations or
ordinance,
they
the signage
act.
ordinance.
Would it be
Um,
possible to get those up front? So we have an idea of what anything they're thinking of, so we can kind of put it together. and-
Well, we kind of did at the work session.
Okay.
I mean, that was, the intent of the work session was to hear what their concerns were at that time, so we could take them to our work session in September. But honestly, they could change the whole nature of it unless they decide to kick it back to us. They don't have to kick it back
The
to
work
us.
session on the 8th is just planning commission.
Yes,
And 6:30.
yes.
You know, Matt, maybe after we're done with our work session, we kind of give direction to staff and the attorney to change it. Maybe as a courtesy, we can say that this is the draft ordinance that we're looking at this time. Send it out to the city council for.
I actually intend to have that posted publicly on the website.
Mhm.
So,
I'll have opportunity to view it.
yeah, no, it's definitely open to the public for public scrutiny.
And if there is public input, the manner in which you would send that to us would be, it would have to come from your department to each of us individually, because it will be,
It's a legislative item, so it's not quasi judicial. So you've got a lot of latitude in terms of discussing this with
The
God and
public.
everyone.
okay.
And you know, like other times where we've sent out comments, you know, it kind of comes in we try to send it out in a batch, so you're not getting, you know, individual emails all the
Mhm.
time, that these are the comments that have been collected. And there would be another packet for the public hearing. So any comments that we would have received, you know, would be incorporated in that packet for the public hearing.
For that reason, if any of us were to receive something individually, I would recommend that it be forwarded to Karen and then let Karen distribute it to everyone, even though it isn't quasi judicial. That way we wouldn't be piecemealing input.
Well, and you keep some integrity.
And while you certainly have latitude to talk to folks about this, I would always say to encourage them, excuse me, encourage them to come to the public hearing so they can share their thoughts with the entire planning commission. Because I think that's helpful to all of you then.
And it depends on the comments that we do receive from the public, pro or con on ordinance. We might say those are good ideas that need further discussion. We won't be able to make a decision at the hearing and ask that the moratorium be extended.
I agree. The moratorium, that's a self-inflicted wound, in my opinion. If we don't feel we have enough input, we shouldn't let that moratorium be hanging over our heads. Just ask them to
Yes.
extend it.
Yes. We'll try. Make our planning director look good.
That's right.
I'm trying. So that's really all I had for you this evening, was just to kind of help frame that and yeah, where we are on that item. And my apologies that I actually thought we were a week
draft.
off since
Mhm.
a week off since you guys have been, doing a lot of different meetings and sessions and stuff, but it's just not shaking out that way. So,
Any other items from the commission?
I've got two things I'm just like to mention. One, I mentioned Karen earlier, and just talked to Carol about it. Over there on the wall, there's a plaque. I call it the Hall of Fame of Planning Commission members. And I'd like to have us think about supporting the nomination of Sally Riley for that Hall of Fame for the many years she spent at the planning department. We just need to figure out what that process is, but maybe it's just simply a letter to city council asking that they would consider that. Think about that, and maybe at the next meeting, we can talk about it further, and I'd be glad to draft a letter of recommendation or whatever. And
Would
the
you
other
need just-
thing I was thinking of is that we meet twice a month. Would it be advantageous for us to think about doing projects on the first Thursday of the month? And then maybe the second one, we have more of a work session, we'll work with the code stuff that we've been talking about. It's just, again, something I'm just gonna throw out there to think about.
Just a
Depends on the
comment,
work.
we seem
Cases
to
come in.
be responding to, requests for reviews and things like that as they come up. So I don't know how we avoid having those show up on either Thursday because of timing and other issues, but no issue with doing it that way, but I think we'd get stepped on by request, wouldn't we? That we'd have to respond to, or would we just say the next hearing meeting would be that second Thursday?
I actually don't have quite enough history in terms of how we got to 2 meetings a month, whether that is just driven by development workload or what. In visiting with Commissioner Larson about a couple other things earlier today, Woodland Park is a very labor-intensive process in the world of planning compared to other communities. No, it does.
Huh.
Yeah, very, very labor-intensive. Yeah, other places I know that that will get to a second meeting in a month. It's typically because they have 8 and 10 items on an agenda. It's typically just a volume issue that they cannot get through that many items in a night, and they actually have consent agendas. So I mean, I'm not opposed to that at all. In fact, it was probably potentially helpful depending upon what we're working on, if we are diving into more code changes, that kind of thing. But like I said, I'm not sure what our parameters or requirements are under other prior resolutions and such with regard to timing of hearing applications.
If I remember right, we went to two meetings a month because the workload was there. There was a demand for, let's hear these requests on a timely basis. And lately, we've been looking at one request per meeting or so. So it's certainly slowed down compared to what it was.
When I signed up, I checked the schedule and there was quite a few meetings canceled last year.
Yeah, Sally told me that too. I'm like, what?
Fewer this year, I think, so far.
Sally's like,
Anyway, I'm
"Oh,
just saying, let's
So-
just think about it. We can talk about it further.
So Larry, can I ask what's driving that? Like, are you?
I'd like to devote more time dealing with the code issues. I
Okay.
mean, we've gone through this process of having a consultant look at it. We have a good framework to work from. I have some suggestions too, that Karen just mentioned, that there are some places in our code that just makes it a burden, for the staff to actually do a timely review when you have a request to get onto the next hearing. And
Okay.
certainly with the staffing the way it's been the last couple of months, we should have been a little bit more cognizant of that, but we're
Yeah.
required by code to make certain things happen at certain times.
Right, so would it be maybe not out of line or horrible, because I understand that the workload is there, but maybe if we say like once a quarter, we're gonna reserve the last, this month is this only planning, and we're gonna meet, and we're gonna hash out all these codes, and, and then Karen knows in advance, hey, don't give us anything, it's gotta go to the next one. And then if there's some sort of, at least every quarter, we're addressing something, or every 2 months, or however we want to set that up, then we have the time and the movement. If we have more on our plates, and when we're meeting with more and more people, but then we also have a reserved time to just work on some of the other stuff we've pushed off. Maybe that's a good.
Or just at least get an agenda of the items
Yeah.
that we need to go over, so they're queued up. So if we have space in a meeting, that's what we work on, those agenda items. Like tonight, we would have had time to work on multiple agenda items had they been on an agenda,
Yeah,
right?
that's
But
the
because
key.
we don't have them pre-staged, we would just hear hearings and review submittals from different,
Land use.
applicants, and then
Yeah,
we
no, I
move
do-
on.
Yeah, tonight would have been a great night to totally dive more into the short-term rental thing, but did not realize it was gonna come back out of city council quite so fast. And I don't have documents back from the city attorney.
Yeah.
So there's.
I have a neat
it's just a-
opportunity. I'd like to take everybody, if they're available, over to a short-term rental that's just down the street, and just walk you through it and show you this type of property, how it's not suitable for anything else. It's been there for 90 years.
One of the cabins.
Yeah, I actually saw I haven't seen it, but I was told it's part of the walking tour brochure for Woodland Park, Pastors Row.
Preacher's
it-
Row, yeah.
Yeah, Preacher's Row, and it goes by those cabins. And we're going to eliminate, potentially, depending on how we write the ordinance, their ability to renew that if it ever sells to another owner. Which I think is not a good idea. I think it's good the way it is. But anyway, so
I know.
it happens to be open tonight. There's nobody there.
Oh.
And it's just a few blocks down the street.
I'll walk over with you. One of the things I had thought about, though, was possibly doing a field trip. Larry, one of your concerns has been distancing the short-term rentals. The existing short-term rentals, if we could visualize, how clustered are they and what impact that would have on them. I was thinking a field trip of for both the commission and the council to go and see where the clusters are and understand where they are. It's one thing to look at them on a map. It's not a very large town, but to understand how they are spaced. And I think the ones that Ken's talking about are
They're close together,
very close together.
but they're not near much else. They're just kind of there, three of them. But anyway, it would be a neat opportunity to do that.
I'd feel more comfortable if we were to do a site visit or evaluation, that we'd at least advertise it ahead of time for people who could actually join us, be aware of it. Because we'll be reviewing those things as a planning commission, not as individuals. Like to see those type of things advertised.
Oh, I agree, but I like nibbling in old houses. I'll walk over with you.
and I was like, I'm nosy. enough,
Yeah,
but
anybody
it's
be
not-
interested, I'd have to show it to them. The other thing I was wanting to request is another subject is we seem to have multiple extensions that come up that get approved, or we listen to whether to approve them or not. And it's stated that if they get their request in before it expires, that we can approve it post expiration. I would like to see where that's written, just for my own benefit. If it's in writing or if it's just by practice, I'd like to know that.
I think it's by practice policy. So
So,
we had issues before.
yeah,
I agree.
so that would be just a request to have that emailed if it's exists in the building department instructions or something, first asking for you know, if you could just send me what an applicant sees when they have to apply for an extension. I've seen the application in the submittals, but I'd like to see instructions, if it's on a website, just a link or something. You could point me to that. That would be helpful.
Yeah, it's not that clear. And of course, it's different from section to section. So it's, I believe, more clearly explained under, I'm guessing, PUD. Because preliminary plat doesn't provide a lot of guidance. So just the preliminary plat shall be valid for no longer than 24 months. 1-year extensions of time may be applied for in writing to the planning commission. And then it goes into a little more detail about final plats, blah, blah. But yeah, that's kind of it. So I think it's the PUD that is a little more clear about needing to make that request prior to the expiration date. It doesn't say the approval has to happen prior to the expiration date, just the request needs to be prior.
It makes sense to me. It seems plenty generous. I don't have any issue with it. I just like to know how it's written, just for my own benefit, since we are the approvers. But anything that's referencing that or close to it, I just like to look at it.
To piggyback on that, and while you're looking, if you don't mind, is there a limit to how many times or how many years? Because I mean, we've got one guy who was like 20 years.
I think that's up to our discretion
Okay.
on a review. How long we can tolerate extensions.
I think it becomes critical when we get closer to the max of water taps, you know, someone just continues to extend their project and other people need the water taps, then it becomes an issue. I mean, that's one example. I'm sure there's probably others as well.
If there's like code changes that would affect the
Yes.
project.
Yeah,
um,
you know, like
trying
the Gold
keep the-
Hills project, for instance, you know.
That was my concern. 'Cause I'm like,
By the way, has he started the Gold Hills project, that the hotel motel?
Yeah, right.
Okay, you were at the hearing where he flat out said he would be back in 2 years for another extension.
I
He
look
lost
at it
his
every
big,
now and again.
he lost a paying renter, so maybe he'll change his mind.
Well, my understand is that one of the leases for the space where he wants to remodel is lengthy, another 5 years or something like that. And he can't do.
That was part of what he testified, was
Yeah.
related to existing leases running through, I think, at least 2024. So,
Sherwin-Williams is one, and then the
Yeah.
academy that just leased the space downstairs is the other one that
Yeah,
had
and
a 2 or 3 year lease, I think.
they had a 2-year lease, or maybe it was 3, and they will have to continue paying him.
so those are all things to consider when you get those kind of requests in front of you, you know, is this really ripe for development? And if not, you know, you guys can make whatever choice you feel is prudent around whether or not an extension really should or should not happen. So,
Yeah, I just wondered if there was some kind of limit.
No.
Like in the role while you were looking for the role. but I think
No.
It's good to know that that's our discretion because.
little thin on standards.
Less is more.
Anything else then?
I do not tonight. So.
No. Well, it's 6:59, meeting's adjourned.
Trying to get out of
Thank
here.
you.
You're ruining yours, so Larry.
Larry, I'm sorry, you're about 20 minutes late.